Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we'll be talking about Python's variables. What are variables in Python? So without wasting much of the time, let's jump into our notebooks. I have it already open, so I just close that and double click on the notebook you created from the last video, variables. Alright, now the notebook is opened. So we're talking about variables. You can type in whatever you want inside this cell. Type in your code, markdowns, headers, comments, whatever it is you want to type. You can type it inside here. And I'm going to make this a header by clicking outside. Right now I'm clicking inside, click outside, press 1 on my keyboard and run the cell. Click on the run button. Now I have a header named variables. So what are variables? Variables are data types inside of Python. It's like assigning a value to a name. So let's say X, we assign the value of 3. And anytime we call X, to run the cell, you use Shift Enter on your keyboard. That's the shortcut. Or you can press the play button to execute that cell. So anytime we check for the value of X, we have 3. So X has been assigned to the value of 3. And we can say Y, we assign the value of 5. And we run it. So X is assigned the value of 3 and Y is equal to 5. So we can say Z is equal to X plus Y. And if we run this, and then we check the value of Z, the value of Z is 8. And why is it 8? Because 5, which is Y, plus 3, which is X, equals 8. So Z, which is equal X plus Y, the value of Z equals 8. And that is how you assign a variable in Python. Now, what can be a variable, if we might ask? Numbers. Numbers can be variables. Like we've seen in this example, we can set a number to be a variable. And when we're talking about numbers, we have two major types of numbers. We have integers and floats. Integers and floats. What are integers? Integers are whole numbers, numbers that cannot exist with decimal points, such as the number of goals scored in a football game. That can never be a float, because a football game can never end with 2.5 goals, right? It's always 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals. So those type of numbers are integers. So you can take it down that integers are whole numbers. Floats are numbers with decimal points. So an example of an integer can be 5. That's an integer. 100 is an integer. On the other hand, a float is a decimal number. So something like 5.6, that is a float, or 10.5. Also a good example of a floating point number. Now, these are, I didn't spell these floats. FL. Alright. So these are the type of numbers we can use in Python. Your numbers has to be either an integer or a float. There are no other number types that are accepted. So when we're talking about integers and floats, let's look at the basic arithmetics we can do with integers and floats. Alright, so let's say we want to add two numbers. We can add 1 plus 1. Now we added two integers, and that gives us 2. So to check the type of number you're working with, if you're interested in that, you can use the type method, and then you can check type of number 1, and it tells you that number 1 is an integer. And you can also check the type of the number, say 3.5. See, it tells us that 3.5 is a float. So you can always check your data types using the type method, this function called type. It shows you the type of data you are working with. So let's go ahead and do more arithmetic operations. We can do multiplications like this, 1 times 3, which would equal 3. And we can do division by using 1, backward slash, any number, say 1 divided by 5, which would result to 0.5, which is a float. Now if we check the type of, let's see what we get. If we check type 1 divide 5, what do we get? Sorry, type error, that's ty. Now it's telling us what Python is seeing is the output of this operation. We know that 1 is an integer, 5 is equally an integer, but Python is looking at the output of this operation, which is 0.2, and it's telling us that that is a float. Now we talk about raising an object to power, so we can do 2 raised to the power of 4. So to do the raised to the power, we use double multiplication sign, and that results in 16. And then we will look at the modulo. Modulo gives us the remainder of the operation. So if let's say, okay, let me just show you as an example. 4 modulo, which is the percentage sign, 2, and we run it. This gives me 0, which is 4 modulo 2 is 0. Now that means when 4 divides 2, the remainder is 0. But if we do 4 divides 2, we get 2.0, which is, we can round this to 2. But the modulo gives us the remainder of the divisor and the dividend. So whatever would be the remainder, that is what the modulo gives us. Let's say we are dividing 100 by 5, and we have 20, that's 2 even. Let's go with 3. Alright, so we have 33 point something. Now if we look at the modulo, we want to get only the remainders. We're not getting, the modulo will give us the remainder. So 100 divided by 3, there will be 1 remaining. So if we share 100 objects by 3 people, at the end of our distribution, there will always be 1. So the modulo gives us 1. Gives us the remainder of the output of 2 operations. And that is why we love the modulo. Now let's talk about variable assignments. Variable assignments. Alright? Variable assignments. So there are some rules you have to take into consideration when creating variables. And rule number 1 is that it cannot start with a number or special character. So it cannot start with a number or special character. And I'll click outside and press M on my keyboard to turn that into a markdown. Or better still, you can make it from code to markdown. Really easy stuff. So we cannot start a variable with a number or special character. Now this is what it means. Now I'm going to create a variable starting with a number. So if I say 3, equal to, let's say, 6. See, syntax error, cannot assign to literal here. Maybe you meant double equal to. Now, this is a comparison operator, which we are not interested in at the moment. Python will never allow you to start assign a variable name that begins with a number. So let's say we have 3 men equal to 6. Same thing, syntax error, invalid decimal literal. We cannot be allowed to do this. Let's try special characters such as the at. Syntax error, maybe you meant this or colon this instead of. So it's just not possible to do this. So what we have to do is always type your variable name using words. It has to be a word, like a plain word, like we can say. It can even be a one character variable, like X. It can be Y. It can be number, or let's say number. So you can't also use white spaces. So number underscore of underscore boys is equal to 12. Now this works very well. So rule number 2, there can be no white spaces, right? Turn that to a markdown. Remember, you can do code or you can do markdown, right? There can be no white spaces. And when I say white spaces, I mean blank spaces. You can't leave the space blank. So you can, to make your code readable, so you can see that something like this, number of, alright, let me show you an example. Number of boys equal 12. Now I have an invalid syntax because Python does not allow white spacing. So if I close out all that white spacing, this will work, but then it's more difficult to read. So what you can do to solve that problem is by using an underscore. So you can use an underscore to separate the words so that it is readable. So number of boys again equal 12, and we can say another variable, number of underscore girls equal 13. So there are more girls than boys, and we can say number of underscore students would equal number of boys plus number of girls. And then when we check the number of students, we have total of 25. So 12 plus 13, that equals 25. So 2 and 3, that's 5. 1 and 1, that is 2. So we're going to stop here, and I hope you understand the concept of creating variables and assigning variables and how we work with numbers. And the next tutorial, we'll be talking about strings. Until then, keep practicing and keep improving your programming. See you there.